So the West Bank and Gaza, for that matter, these are refugee camps, essentially. I mean, these are not, and not even essentially, they are refugee camps. A lot of people will say it's an open air prison. I've been to the Gaza Strip. This was in 2000, and it was rough. I mean, we're talking about a lot of incomplete houses that don't have any windows and just have like carpets over these huge places where there would normally be a wall, lots of piles of garbage, a lot of burning tires, a lot of just kids playing in garbage or with like old bike tires. And I remember I was staying with a Palestinian family, and their parents had worked for the Palestinian Authority, but they had Hezbollah flags all over their house. So I got kind of a quick lesson in, wait a minute, I thought your dad worked for the government. Actually, he hates the government. So he's kind of like this inside man for Hezbollah. What's that? And, we had a lot of conversations about that kind of stuff, and we'll get into some of that. But these are not nice places to live. And the Palestinians are generally not allowed to leave. There's plenty of exceptions. Many of them worked in Israel. A lot of times they'll send their kids to study abroad, depending on how privileged they are. But mostly you can't leave. And there's not adequate water supply. There's not a lot of electricity. So these people are living in pretty desperate conditions. And that, I think, again, I'm not trying to justify any violence here, but people are often asking me, why would they do this? Well, because there's no sense of upward mobility, freedom, or anything like that. So there's a lot of desperation in there.
Well,
and that's part of the problem.
If you don't feel that there's a lot of opportunity, and then someone hands you a gun and a headband and a uniform, now you're somebody. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if all of your friends are joining Hamas and you're not a member of Hamas, I just want to work in my dad's bakery. Come on, guys.
Right.
That you're going to be, when you're a young man and you think you're invincible. So I guarantee you, every single Hamas militant that entered Israel on Saturday, they thought they were going to be the ones that were left alive at the end. Right. Like nobody ever thinks it's going to be them that gets killed. So I'm sure when you're 18 years old, when you're young and you feel indestructible, it's really easy to take that headband and take that rifle and go into Israel because your friends are all admiring what you're doing. But the end state is there's really no positive outcome to what happens after that. And I'm not sure what the end game is.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, and of course I still will. But this gives us an overview of what Hamas is. This gives us an overview of the Palestinian Authority, in brief, the West Bank and Gaza. But Hamas, by the way, of note, have they never allowed elections again since 2006? I believe that. I mean, I don't remember being able to find any other elections since they came to power.
I actually don't recall. That is a fairly political.
Right.
I'm pretty good
Literally.
at identifying tanks and weapons and talk all day about some of the tactics used. But you could be right about that. I actually don't recall hearing about this.
So I looked this up, and again, I could just be missing something. But as far as I can see, Hamas just simply did not allow any other elections in the Gaza Strip. Now, supposedly they maintain a wide support base. They did come to power by winning an election, like a majority vote. But their charter essentially says Israel must be pushed into the sea and doesn't have a right to exist. So it's not a government where Israel can go, okay, look, we'll turn the electricity back on again, and we're going to build some hospitals and some schools, and you guys calm down. That's not really sort of in their DNA. And you might think, but if they live there, don't they want to live in peace? And we'll get to why that's not necessarily going to be a possibility and why the people who live in the Gaza Strip aren't necessarily the ones who are making the decisions here. But can you tell us what happened on Saturday? Because I think a lot of people are going to go, okay, great, I know that something happened and it's all over the news, but what specifically did Hamas do and what is Israel doing in response?
Well, Hamas essentially launched a raid. And a raid is a military action where a unit enters and strikes an area and then withdraws from that area. And usually raids are designed to harass an enemy, accomplish some sort of sabotage objective, destroy points of key terrain, or destroy key military units. In this case, this raid was designed to cause terror, and the raid was designed to capture prisoners that could later be traded for some of the 4,500 or so Hamas prisoners that Israel is holding. What's special about this raid is its incredible complexity. This has been in the works for years. No doubt in my mind, this has been in the works for years. They had soldiers come over the land border. They had drones. Let me actually walk you through the whole plan of attack here. Drones took off, and some of these drones attacked Israeli sites, attacked Israeli tanks, attacked Israeli bunkers, or what are called OPLPs, observation posts, listening posts. They dropped grenades and weapons on these, just like we've seen in Ukraine. The next step, or the next phase of the operation, was actually breaking through the border fence, which was done with explosives or in some cases bulldozers. And militants ran through those gaps. They breached these gaps and they ran through. There was also sea insertions, so people took small boats and they inserted themselves above Gaza from the sea. They also used paragliders. This was actually unbelievable to see, because it takes roughly a month to learn how to fly a paraglider. So it is hard to believe that Israeli intelligence did not pick up on a bunch of people with a sudden interest in paragliding.
I wondered about that, right? Yeah. So they're flying around on these paragliders. And how do you train with that? Because you're not allowed to fly things from what I understand, in Gaza without permission and certainly not without being seen. And so it must look a little weird when it's like, yeah, we have a paragliding club and it's got a kind of a ridiculous number of members and they all got this hardware. Like, that's just a strange hobby for a bunch of people in a refugee camp to suddenly take up.
I don't know. I can say that maybe a likely scenario would be that some of these militants were trained in Iran and then brought over for the actual mission. That would make a lot of sense if they were trained in Iran. Maybe Lebanon, although Hezbollah, which is a similar organization in southern Lebanon, and Hamas aren't
similar to Hamas.
They're similar. They're not exactly friends, but they both have similar objectives. Hezbollah is Sunni Muslim, and Hamas is mainly Shia Muslim, which is weird that Iran is supporting Hamas because Iran is mostly Shia.
That's what I thought, because they also support Hezbollah, do they not?
Yes, they do. They do.
Yeah. So Iran is supporting both of these militant groups, even though they're not necessarily the same belief religiously, which to me, a lot of people online are saying, oh, religion this, religion that. Yes, okay, the cover is religion, but when you're talking about this kind of conflict, a lot of this is just down to practicality, in my opinion. A lot of this is Iran doesn't like the United States. It doesn't like peace in the Middle East because everybody else in the Middle East kind of hates Iran at this point. So when those countries get along, like Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt, Jordan, etc., that's bad for Iran. So they don't really care that the book they have is slightly different from the book the other guys have. This is more like, we just want to mess up the chessboard as much as possible because that buys us time. What do you think?
A lot of it's power. I mean, if Iran wants to flex its muscles, it doesn't necessarily have an expeditionary military, right? They can't necessarily send an aircraft carrier someplace to project power. But what they can do is they can fund terror. They can fund terrorist organizations, and those terrorist organizations can act as a proxy for Iran. And there are no shortage of men who want to feel special, right? And some Iranian guy comes to you and gives you the first paycheck, the first steady paycheck you've ever had in your life, and hands you a gun and gives you a headband and says, okay, you're in charge of these people. How special do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
You feel pretty darn special, right? And we've seen it work in the Donbass, where Russia rolls in and says to everybody, hey, you guys are ethnically Russian, right? Let me give you some money. We're going to start a militia. We're going to take over the town hall, right? So Iran knows how to play people. And Iran is kind of looking out for Iran. They want to be able to control, like you say, control that chessboard.